Right, low key, one of my favourite shots of the season. Look at this blocking. Like, this is a pretty unorthodox like shaped room. You've got these two pillars as well, so the room is not like a solid rectangle, which sort of complicates things somewhat. But you've got Gwyneth here in the foreground being tended to by Rose. On the left here of the frame is the Doctor standing against one of those columns. In the background between the two, you've got Sneed, and far off in the distance, back here over the mantelpiece or the fireplace, whatever that is in the background, is Charles Dickens. All of our main players are in this shot here, establishing their status and state of mind. It's such good blocking. It's so well composed. And it's just a bunch of people standing and sitting around. Oh, I love TV. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mr. TARDIS and welcome to episode 3 of this 20 years later Doctor Who retrospective reaction series. We're going over series 1 of Doctor Who, which debuted 20 years ago. This is episode 3 of series 1, The Unquiet Dead, written by Mark Gatiss, directed by A. Ross Lynn, and it broadcast on April 9th, 2005. And going into the episode, in retrospect, it seems like the safest and most sensible approach that Russell T Davies and those at the BBC could have taken, because, you know, you've had the contemporary modern day episode with Rose, you've gone into the far future with The End of the World, and now, because this is a time travel show, you have to go back into the past. And while Doctor Who had a bigger budget in 2005, the visual effects got better, the technology got better, there's still the fundamental truism of Doctor Who being made at the BBC, and that's that the historical episodes are probably going to age a lot better because they're going to have a wealth of resources and wardrobes and makeup and basically just this incredible UK TV infrastructure that would allow them to make very convincing historical dramas. And that's like still true in 2025 just as it was in the 1960s and 70s. If you go back and watch Doctor Who from the 1960s, you'll have all those like ropey special effects and men in rubber suits and such, but the historical episodes for the most part actually hold up consistently better. However, quite early on in Doctor Who's history, when the Daleks became such a massive runaway success for the programme, and Sidney Newman, one of the creators of Doctor Who, he didn't want any bug-eyed monsters, he wanted it to be an educational show about science in the future and history in the past. But then when the viewing figures came in and the spacefaring stuff, you know, like the Dalek stories and the Web Planets, they became like the massive indisputable viewing figures hits. And then you've got stories like the Crusades and the Aztecs, which, you know, kind of did well, but then you've got an episode like The Romans, a historical comedy which broadcast on Winston Churchill's like state funeral day. Not that many people watched it. So towards the end of the Hartnell era, and especially during the Patrick Troughton era, they leaned a lot further into the sci-fi. And then I don't know exactly the figures, but I think you can maybe count the amount of pure historical Doctor Who episodes from the 1970s onwards, before the revival in 2005, maybe on like two hands. Like, there's not many. At least in the context of like, what, let's say ballpark number, the 100 stories that broadcast between 1970s and 1989. Like, how many of those are actually like historical stories? So revitalizing that element in 2005 seemed like a really smart approach, and in terms of the creatives you get on board, you know, with the director A. Ross Lynn, who did The End of the World and is doing The Unquiet Dead, get a director who can, you know, do both. And then you also have the writer Mark Gatiss, who at this point was quite an established writer in TV. However, he had an extensive amount of experience in Doctor Who expanded media. He's been writing novelizations and Big Finish audios and such, and BBV like direct-to-video movies. He's been doing that since like the early 1990s, so he is part of like this initial club of like massive Doctor Who even did those sketches with David Walliams in the late 90s to celebrate Doctor Who night. Like, this guy is like an unambiguously like massive fan of the show.
Oh my god, it's really him! I've not cried this much since Adric died.
And assembling this team of Doctor Who expanded media writers like Mark Gatiss, like Paul Cornell, like Rob Shearman, like Stephen Moffat. These are just a few amongst many individuals who nurtured Doctor Who during the wilderness years in the 1990s and the early 2000s, so it kind of makes sense to also bring them into the fold when it makes its debut back on TV again. And Mark Gatiss would regularly write for the programme from 2005 up until 2017. And while I don't know that much about Mark Gatiss's writing career outside of Doctor Who, I do know that he is a massive horror buff, as in like gothic horror, like Hammer horror stuff. So having him write a historical Doctor Who episode, the third episode of this revived series, it makes complete sense. I don't really have that many memories watching The Unquiet Dead on broadcast 20 years ago, but I have revisited it since and found it to be a really strong, like fundamentally strong horror drama episode. So let's see if 20 years later The Unquiet Dead holds up. But before we get started, make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button as well, leave any comment down below to appease the almighty YouTube algorithm. Let's dive into Doctor Who, The Unquiet Dead. And this is just the true, like, Doctor Who cold open now, where the Doctor and companion, the TARDIS, everything, they're not involved. Let's establish the atmosphere, the threat and the tone. Still very orange, though. It's a very orange room. It's a great sound effect. that's, that's such a funny reaction. Yeah, he just snapped his neck. Great line as well. We've got another one. Smacks the side of the coffin. And this is a great shot. This long take. It's a strong opener. I have no complaints. The Unquiet Dead by Mark Gatiss. That ship is just held together by a wish and a dream, and I love it. And now the vortex is blue, because that means past. Yeah, and this is really interesting casting in retrospect. You got Eve Miles, who would later play Gwen in Torchwood. Yeah, they don't really draw attention to it much here, but I love the contrast that Mr. Sneed, played brilliantly here by Alan David, just completely changes tone and tact when the customers aren't around. It's a really nice little writing detail. But yeah, having Eve Miles at this point in Doctor Who history, it's really interesting as well, because for the making of this story as well, where it was going to focus way more on Sneed, but then as the writing process moved forward, they realised that no, Gwyneth is actually the heart of the story, so let's bring her role up, let's boost her role in the story. And then you cast Eve Miles, and then you've got the element of the rift in this story as well, which would later develop into Torchwood, and then you'd cast Eve Miles again. A lot of little tiny decisions that happened in a very short span of time that would have massive ramifications on the future of the Doctor Who expanded universe. Really interesting stuff in hindsight.
Mr. Sneed, for shame, how many more times? It's ungodly.
Don't look at me like it's my fault. Oh, come on, hurry up. She was 86. She can't have got far.
What about Mr. Redpath?
Now, stop prevaricating, girl. Get the hearse ready. We're going body snatching.
He really has he has no decorum. Really macabre sensibilities. See, they find it funny.
Naples, December 24th, 1860.
Why does the TARDIS say that, since it's emphatically not that location or year?
You can go back and see days that are dead and gone, 100,000 sunsets ago.
Not a bad life.
Better with two.
Yeah, their camaraderie, their chemistry is so strong. We know that this is part of the A. Roslin filming block with The End of the World. What block number was it? Okay, I'm just looking now on Wikipedia. This was the second filming block after Rose, Aliens of London and World War III, which was the Keith Boak filming block. So yeah, obviously there's behind the scenes drama that we're now privy to all these years later. They found their footing in the characters as well, and I think that really shows. And enter Simon Callow as Charles Dickens. Like I was mentioning earlier about his the safe, surefire creative decisions, this also is one of them. Simon Callow obviously is really great in this role, but this isn't even the first time he's played Charles Dickens. Kind of similar to when they cast Ian McNeice in series 5 for Victory of the Daleks as Winston Churchill, and Ian McNeice has played Winston Churchill on stage before, and Simon Callow was hosted and produced and presented and acted in numerous Charles Dickens related projects and played Charles Dickens numerous times as well. So he's basically the definitive UK depiction in pop culture of Charles Dickens, and then you get him in Doctor Who. You know, it's a very safe and very smart decision.
Christmas Eve. Not the best of times to be alone. I've been rather, let's say, clumsy with family matters.
If you want to know, like, basic, like, story structure and story fundamentals when it comes to characterization, this, I think, is a really good example of it. Just go and watch this first scene with Charles Dickens, and then watch the last scene that he's in the episode, and it's a night and day change and night and day difference. Obviously, character arcs and, you know, story structure doesn't need to be that explicit and that obvious, but it's, you know, it's a good stepping stone. It's a good, like, entry point on how these things can be depicted, and how Doctor Who can work as a format to tell standalone stories. You know, you've got this guy who thinks that his best days are behind him. He doesn't really have anything more to contribute and do, but he's literally going to perform one of his greatest hits on stage right now, as opposed to creating anything new. He's touring alone. He's not with his family. And then at the end of the episode, because of the experiences that he's had, the adventures and this time with the Doctor and Rose, he's now going to see his family again. He's now going to, you know, try and finish his final piece, although he doesn't know that it's his final piece, and he's going to try and make the most of life. He's going to do the Ebenezer Scrooge, you know, God bless us everyone.
On I go. Same old show. I'm like a ghost. Condemned to repeat myself.
Yeah, it's right up on screen. Whenever someone tells you that Doctor Who is a subtle show, subtle does not mean good. Not subtle does not mean bad. You've got to get rid of that distinction. You've got to excise your mind of these simplistic restraints, okay? But yeah, the text is very explicit. The character arc is being just told to you right now in Charles Dickens' very first scene. It's a good lesson in story structure and character arcs.
Always think up some new turns.
No, I can't. Even my imagination grows stale.
Mark Gatiss knows other writers who use subtext and they're all cowards, okay? Come on, folks.
Blimey,
Don't laugh.
you look beautiful.
Aww.
Considering
Considering what?
that you're human.
That you're a stupid monkey.
Compliment.
Stupid
It's
ape.
gonna change.
Change my jumper.
You stay there.
Love that sound of crunching snow. But yeah, it's magical. Looks magic. But yeah, the contrast from this to the end of the world, where you're in the future, but you've got these quite small, narrow corridors and these glamorous interiors and stuff, and now you're outside in the snow. You've gone from the expanding sun to winter Cardiff. I'm going to say this so many times over the course of this, like, reaction marathon, but it's so well considered and thought out. Yeah, the BBC know how to do historical dramas. Tap into that resource. You'd be stupid not to. And there's the very similar blocking that A. Ross Lynn did in The End of the World as well. Characters leaving the foreground to expose new detail in the background.
Only got the flight a bit wrong.
I don't care.
It's not 1860, it's 1869.
I don't care.
It's Cardiff.
Right.
Why does she have an issue with that? But yeah, let's just go to Wales all the time.
It's Scrooge. Having his
Has anyone actually read A Christmas Carol? And like it's a obviously everybody knows the story, but it's a genuinely good book. I try and read it every year, but it's so good. I love it a lot. It's a lovely read.
Oh my lord. Look. Like that. But Phantasmagoria is
Phantasmagoria was the name of Mark Gatiss' first Big Finish audio drama for Doctor Who. A Fifth Doctor story.
that's more like it.
That must have been a fun day on set.
Infirmary. Oh, she's dead. Oh my god, what'd you do to her?
I'm curious if that's the first time that Rose has seen a dead body. I mean, she was only a baby when her father died, and like we don't know any of that yet in the TV series. I'm just wondering now. Did you see? I think in the series this is the first body that she encounters. No, what am I on about? She saw Cassandra die. She saw no, what? Cassandra didn't die technically. She comes back.
Why not? I'll give you a very good reason why not, because this is my coach. Well, get in there. What did he say? Let me see this first. I'm not
This is such a nice little scene as well.
no, the one with the trains. The Signalman.
Signalman's a great read as well.
Best short story ever written. You're a genius.
You want me to get rid of it, sir?
No, I think you can stay. I was thinking bit of Martin Chuzzlewit. What's that about? Was that just padding or what? I mean, it's rubbish, that bit. I thought you said you were my fan. Oh, well, if you can't take criticism. Go on, do the death a little now. It cracks me up. Forget about that. Come on, faster.
He's so ADHD coded, and I love it.
What are you wasting my time talking about dry old books? This is much more important.
Driver, be swift. The chase is on. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and like as soon as something exciting happens, Charles Dickens takes the opportunity and grabs it with both hands.
I'm sorry, sir, we closed.
He looks good in that top hat.
Having trouble with your gas? What Shakespeare is going on?
As opposed to What the Dickens. It's a really interesting approach to ghosts as well. The element of the gas. I'm curious if that is inspired by something. Because, Mark Gatiss has got like an encyclopedic knowledge of Gothic horror, so I'm interested if he took notes from something else. But I don't think I've seen any other horror fiction take this approach to spirits and gas and monsters. It's a really great approach. And it ties it into the period as well, because gas was starting to make its way into UK buildings in I think the 1810s, the 1820s, but it wasn't actually implemented into your average house until the 1870s and the 1880s. So it makes sense for these bigger, grander buildings, these more upper class establishments, like funeral houses, like theatres and stuff, to have them. So yeah, it's an interesting time period to set it in. A lot of thought's gone into this. It's very well considered, as I keep repeating myself. Oh, he's done that before. How does one practice kicking a door in like that? First try as well. And that voice and scream as well from actor Zoe Thorne. It's a really great voice, really strong outing here as well. You never see her. Well, I think you maybe see part of her performance when she's like the CGI Gelth later, but God, that's grim.
Until about 3 months back, and then the stiffs. The deer departed. Started getting restless.
I like this characterization of the Doctor in this episode as well. I don't know if it's down to Christopher Eccleston, or if it's down to Mark Gatiss's writing, or A. Ruslin's staging and direction, or a combination of all three. It's a collaborative medium, but there's a lot of scenes in this episode where the Doctor's just in the background observing. I won't try and make a habit of this in these reactions, but even when Charles Dickens knocks at the door and the Doctor's watching the conversation, he's observing, he's letting Charles Dickens take the reins here until he spots something that he can contribute to. And there's a lot of scenes like that in the episode where the Doctor is just in the background observing. Yeah, it's not something we see that frequently in this series, which kind of has me inclined to think it's either A. Roslin or Mark Gatiss. That's sort of the implication I'm getting from it. But yeah, in this particular episode, it's an interesting approach.
What's the wreck?
A weak point in time and space, a connection between this place and another. That's the cause of ghost stories most of the time.
That's how I got that.
That's slightly a bit, in hindsight, a little bit, where on earth did you get that from? Is this a deleted scene? Is this something that was in an early draft that kind of got excised a bit? The Doctor just mentions the rift out of nowhere. Little bit contrived, but nitpick with 20 years of hindsight.
Stories. Mind you, truth be told, it's been good for business.
That's such a Mark Gatiss line. He's someone who you can really tell the identity of when you watch one of his episodes. Even if you didn't see the credits or know anything about it, you can watch it and think that's a bit of a Mark Gatiss influence. That's a nice shot. The POV of the corpse. There we go again. A observing Doctor.
All right. I shouldn't have told you to shut up. I'm sorry.
That's nice. The Doctor actually apologising. That's a lovely little beat. Yeah. That should happen more often, I think.
And what does the human body do when it decomposes? It breaks down, produces gas. Perfect home for these gas things. They can
Yeah, it's so credible
Just like your driver and his
in a Doctor Who context.
Can it be that I have the world entirely wrong?
Not wrong. There's just more to learn.
I've always read that
That's a killer line.
as much all causes. I hope
two great actors with great dialogue, with strong characterization. It's a great scene, and it's just two people talking in a room. That's a nice shot as well. The light is the establishing shot, and then you move the camera down. And Eros Lynn and Ernie Vince must have hated this room as well, because it's such a small location. Like, getting the camera behind Eve Miles for that over-the-shoulder shot towards Rose. Obviously, they're cheating it a little bit, just so that the camera can fit in that space. But yeah, it's not a big space. This is what we were talking about last week with The End of the World, the scene with Rose and Ruffalo, which was like a very late in the game, almost as close to the wire as you can get, a last-minute addition, and it feels like the series as well. It like pivots on scenes like that, where Rose is talking to Ruffalo, is talking to people like Gwyneth as well, finding these common connections of class and of human connection, despite the time period, despite the setting change. It's these fundamentals that she's able to ground herself onto and connect to. It's what made Doctor Who succeed 20 years ago. These fundamentals.
People rushing about, half naked for shame.
Really nice minimalistic music as well.
The metal boxes racing past.
This is another track that's not on the soundtrack. Murray Gold, get to work.
Limit the things you see. The darkness. The big bad wolf.
Sure, that means nothing. It's fine. We'll park that.
It's getting stronger, more powerful, is that right?
How long have you been there?
We're going to have a seance.
Oh, actually, memory unlock. I said I didn't really have any memories of watching this episode, but I just remembered now. I watched this with my brother, who's a couple of years older than me. He would have been, 14, 15 at this time. And yeah, so we were watching this, and I remember him having a big reaction to that line. We're going to have a seance. And he was like, oh, let's go. Like, getting exciting. Yeah, I remember that. Okay. I don't think I watched this one with my parents, but definitely with my older brother.
Are you there?
I'm surprised the Doctor and Rose aren't sat next to each other. But it makes sense, because when the Time War gets mentioned in the scene, the Doctor has to glance across the table. Wouldn't be able to do that if she was sat next to him. Sorry, this is boring TV blocking stuff now. I apologise.
Make the link.
It's a nice audio cue. The lighting on there, that's great. And much like Cassandra last time, this isn't motion capture. This is manually put together and performed by the Mill, based off of the actress's performance.
The war came.
What war?
The Time War. The whole universe convulsed.
There we go. Love that shot as well.
Rage.
And the panning camera when it happens.
But dead.
Notice how they really lean hard on the pity angle as well. Right, low key, one of my favourite shots of the season. Look at this blocking. Like, this is a pretty unorthodox, like shaped room. You've got these two pillars as well, so the room is not like a solid rectangle, which sort of complicates things somewhat. But you've got Gwyneth here in the foreground, being tended to by Rose. On the left here of the frame is the Doctor standing against one of those columns. In the background between the two, you've got Sneed, and far off in the distance, back here over the mantelpiece or the fireplace, whatever that is in the background, is Charles Dickens. All of our main players are in this shot here, establishing their status and state of mind. It's such good blocking. It's so well composed. And it's just a bunch of people standing and sitting around. Oh, I love TV and film.
Good system. It might work.
Yeah, and the Doctor
Why not? It's like recycling.
has done this dozens of times as well. He's had this, like, a similar dilemma. He's helped other people. He's used unorthodox methods to help unorthodox people. And Rose is just learning about this for the first time, and she's got, you know, qualms about it morally. Qualms which are later discovered to be valid. And, you know, the Doctor's kind of in the wrong here for you know, letting them mentioning the Time War kind of blind him to the influence of the Gelth, which is a really interesting, like, moral dilemma. We talked about this in The End of the World as well, like the idea of, like, it's this conflict between the Doctor and the companion, not so much that they, like, full on break up or break apart or whatever, or fall out, but the Doctor's like a millennia-old alien who travels time and space, and Rose is a teenage human. They're going to have different philosophies, they're going to have different approaches to the life in the universe, like, you know, just by design. So of course they're going to butt heads somewhat, and, you know, it's this conflict that makes these characters more interesting, so that their bond, when they, you know, have these strong moments later on, these strong emotional connections later, it feels more credible, it feels more earned. Like I was saying with The End of the World, like, no disrespect to Ncuti and Millie's incarnations of the Doctor and the companion archetypes and such, but you wouldn't have conflicts like this nowadays, and it's so needed.
Do you carry a donor card?
It's different.
It is different, yeah, it's a different morality. Get used to it or go home.
Like, I don't side with the Doctor's approach here, but you can completely see the through line that he's taken, just as you can see the through line that Rose has taken here. And also, like, Rose, in a sense, is in the wrong as well. She's trying to speak on behalf of Gwyneth, who is able to speak for herself.
Say that, miss, because that's very clear inside your head that you think I'm stupid.
That's not fair.
And
True, though.
she's been in her mind, so maybe she does think that.
By your own mind.
Look,
And the angels need
that's interesting as well. I've never picked up on that before. Watch Eccleston during
You're
this.
very different where you're from.
He doesn't look at Gwyneth once in this shot. It's all at Rose.
Angels need me. Doctor, what if I
Now he's looking at Gwyneth there for that line exchange. But yeah, he's looking at Rose during this shot
here and now?
because he wants to make sure that she's convinced. It kind of feels like he's, even though he knows what he's doing, he's looking for her permission
Know my own mind.
and her approval.
And the angels need me. Doctor,
20 years later, and I've only just kind of picked up on that.
Any chance you're going to say gazebo, is there?
You could also, maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill here, but there's like maybe a bit of a gender dynamic here as well. You've got Rose and Gwyneth here on the other side of the room, occupying their own frame.
Going to say gazebo.
And then it cuts across to the three blokes here. You know, basically the figures of authority, I assume. But yeah, I don't know, maybe there's a video essay to be made of that. Someone else can make that, but you know.
Praise the Doctor, praise him. Promise you won't hurt her. Hurry, please. So little time.
And they don't respond to that.
This isn't a permanent solution, all right?
my angels. I can help them live.
Yeah, they're not responding.
Weak point.
You don't have to do this.
And in hindsight,
My angels.
Establish the
she's dead.
reach out of the void. Let us through.
Gwyneth's dead now. I want to see the rushes for this, because this must look so strange.
We descend.
And, okay, bad alien plan for invasion and conquest. Maybe don't give the game away immediately. You know, maybe you should have buried the lead there somewhat. Yeah, we've had aliens, we've had plastic mannequins, we've got gaseous ghosts and stuff, but now we are dealing with genuine corpses. Like, genuine zombies.
I think it's going a little bit wrong.
Yep.
Trusted you. I pitied you.
Yeah, they took advantage of his guilt. I don't know how they knew how to do that. Maybe they just got lucky, but they just name-dropped the Time War in front of the Doctor and his guilt just overtook him. And yeah, this is a recreation of Christmas Carol. The knock on the door. That's a great little touch.
I pushed boxes at the Boston Tea Party. Now I'm going to die in a dungeon. In Cardiff.
I want to see that Big Finish story. The Ninth Doctor at the Boston Tea Party. Okay, so this is actually something I keep on forgetting. I've had it explained to me what exactly Charles Dickens is doing. He's obviously filling up the house with all of the gas in order to try and draw out the Gelth. One second, I think, because I did my review of this story years ago, and someone explained it to me in the comment section, but I've forgotten the explanation. Here we go, in my review of The Unquiet Dead, right, one of the top comments from Eric Marith. As far as the gas drawing out the Gelth, imagine you have a fish in a fishbowl, the Gelth within the deceased, and you drop the fishbowl into a river, the room flooded with gas. Will the fish stay in the fishbowl where it was cramped? Most likely not. It'll probably leave the fishbowl for a larger environment available to it so it can move about more freely. Xander Grogan as well. I'm late with the comment, but I'm sure other people have answered. By filling the room with gas, it gives the Gelth a suitable atmosphere to float around in. One ambassador even says, failing atmosphere hostile when outside with the child, so it gives the Gelth a room to fly around in and ditch the corpses. Yeah, quite a few people have explained this to me. I've just not retained it. But if you fill the room with gas, equalising the pressure between the room and the insides of the bodies, there's no longer anything holding the Gelth inside the bodies, so they start permeating into the room. It even explains why we can see the blue Gelth gas coming out of the bodies while they're piloting them, because it's not a perfect pressurisation like an air tank. Some gas will escape. AKA, smarter people than me picked up on this in the episode, and I just keep forgetting it.
Suck them into the air like poison from a wound.
Yeah, I think it could have been explained better. Having it been explained to me by very smart and nice commenters, I kind of get it now. But I do think the episode maybe should have given it an extra line or two, or come up with a better allegory as opposed to poison from a wound. I think drawing poison from a wound is not quite analogous to the descriptions that I've been given, but nitpicks. Oh, thank you for letting us know, Charles Dickens. Come on, Charles Dickens, maybe you should know about Show Don't Tell.
Sorry.
Oh, I got chills just there. Oh, how I could do something really funny right about now.
Even for you, Doctor.
God,
Save the world.
he looks so guilty as well.
Servant girl. No one will ever know.
We'll touch on this in future reactions, but lines like that are like the cornerstone, the anchor point of this whole series.
This morning I thought I knew everything in the world. Now I know I've just started.
Yeah, we talked about this before, just the
Was not the boy's
story arc just coming full circle really cleanly here.
The mystery of Edwin Drood and the blue.
But I wonder how long it would take for a horse and carriage to get from Cardiff to London on Christmas Eve.
Good luck.
In the box. Both of you.
Down, boy. See ya.
Did Moffat Ghost write this?
In your time, he was already dead. We've brought him back to life. And he's more alive now than he's ever been. Charlie Bob.
I love that line. It kind of feels like something, I don't know, Sidney Newman would really appreciate. Oh, one of my favourite details. The TARDIS disappears and the snow that was resting on it falls. They didn't have to do that detail, but they did. And it completes it.
God bless us, everyone.
Yeah, a 9th Doctor Christmas special, technically, I guess. Maybe. Broadcast in April. And now we go back to contemporary England. And there's another Torchwood element. We'll talk about that next week, of course. But yeah, that's Doctor Who The Unquiet Dead 20 years later. But yeah, that really holds up. It's a really good, trilogy of episodes as well. Rose, The End of the World, and The Unquiet Dead. I think out of the three, The Unquiet Dead is probably the strongest episode of the three. It's probably the strongest episode up until you get to Dalek. Yeah, I think it's directed exceptionally well. It looks like it looks really, really striking all these years later. I think what's kind of stood out to me, particularly on this rewatch, is the characterization of the 9th Doctor and his role as a tacit observer, sort of lurking on the periphery of all of these scenes, ready to chime in and move the plot forward. But Eccleston makes it really compelling to watch, and these little minute details here as he's finding his footing in the part. I think the conflict between Rose and the 9th Doctor is really compelling stuff as well. The Gelth are a strong villain as well. Simon Callow is really great in this role that he's been playing for years up until this point. The macabre sense of humor is a really strong contrast to, compared to last week's Douglas Adams inspired The End of the World. Because what you want to do with this trilogy of episodes in particular is show Doctor Who's range and, its breadth of genre and tone and characterization. And I think it's really done that here. While you've still got these recurring themes, particularly, Rose's interaction with Gwyneth and Rose's interaction with Ruffalo in the previous episode. But yeah, it's a really strong outing. It's got really strong gothic horror sensibilities with a fun, macabre sense of humour. This kind of feels like the story that Mark Gatiss has been waiting to write for years at this point. That so much of his expanded universe work had been leading up to this, and he for the most part he kind of hit it out the park here. I've got a few like little nitpicks here and there which I've mentioned in this reaction, but yeah, this is a really strong episode. This is like, probably top 5 of the whole season, with really interesting implications moving forward into the Doctor Who universe with the Rift, with Eve Miles as Gwyneth and later on Gwen, the show's obsession with Cardiff as a setting as well, and like basing Torchwood there as well, because these interesting little seeds, these little nuggets being planted here, it's really fun to look back on. And I'm assuming that A. Ross Lynn loved directing this episode so much that when he came back for series 2, he directed almost exclusively like historical episodes. He did Tooth and Claw, The Idiot's Lantern, Girl in the Fireplace, and then he did Fear Her, which is just jumping forward 6 years into the future, so it's not that different. Yeah, I'm assuming he got quite sick of the year 5 billion and decided, this historical stuff, I'm kind of enjoying this a bit more, is my interpretation. Mark Gatiss will be back next year for The Idiot's Lantern. He would, of course, be writing for the series regularly, including An Adventure in Space and Time, which is a belter of a story. But yeah, that was my reaction to Doctor Who, The Unquiet Dead. Let me know your thoughts on all of it in the comment section below. Hit the like button, subscribe as well. It really, really helps me out. Helps to appease the almighty YouTube algorithm. Next week, we're going to be back with Aliens of London, the first of a 2-part story set in London, contemporary London in 2005, where we're going to go full-blown domestic drama. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you all next time.